All right, I'm going to open the subcommittee work session, or reopen, it's on the continuing subcommittee work session on House Bill 1271. And so we have been working on the Guardian Ad Litem Board. I know we got some good input from Representative Gould, and I sent, there were two emails out. One was a response to that, but let me find it here. It's assignment, not the scheduling. Oh, wrong folder, that's why, sorry. So I sent out an email which was in the form that I would have sent to the partial draft amendment for House Bill 1271. Thank you. Which I think took in all of the changes that we had discussed. And I don't know, Representative Gould, if you had a chance to look at, on the second page of the email, the part dealing with the membership of Guardian Ad Litem. I tried to reflect what I understood of what you wanted. Actually, I mostly copied it. So does that look okay?
It looked good. I think Doug was gonna look at language for that lawyer, a guardian ad litem who was a member of the bar, is the way I put it, but there might be better language than that.
Yeah, if you could come up. And I didn't send this out to a lot of people. I sent it to the people on the subcommittee, but I probably should have sent it to you. But the proposed language, and this is
Would you like me to give them my copy?
that I had mailed out.
This is what you mailed out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have it. Start there.
So it's the top of the third page of that, where it goes one member who is a bar member and who is a,
Page 2, 3, yeah.
Page 3, what line?
oh, you,
I gave it, so top of the back page is where he's at.
is this the same as this thing? Oh,
Yeah.
you just removed.
I didn't give him the front.
Okay, cool.
Right.
I don't know where it is on that copy, but it's the section that deals, the change is 490-C:2, and it's Roman 1 D. And it starts one member who is a bar member. And I think the other language was pretty much copied from the current statute with some removals, yes?
I just wanted to go back to, I brought this up at the full board too yesterday, full committee too. I do have a concern with putting executive director. I know we moved it from board to if we can keep the office as a consistency is what
No,
in
I-
other places,
I
right?
actually, if you look at the amendment I sent,
Yeah,
I changed it to executive director everywhere because that's what's in the rest of statute. And if you have you can't assign a responsibility to an office. You have to assign it to a person. And she is the director of the office, so really, in effect, it has to be the same. Now, that doesn't mean she's going to do everything. She has staff and all that. But the language that's in the rest of the statute is the executive director.
so the existing statute has executive director?
Correct. And I think it's just a drafting error that they like over half they put executive director, and in some places they did office. And I went through it because if you look at bracket, board bracket, where they're replacing it, there's like 145 occurrences in here.
Correct.
And I went through them all, and what I'm telling OPOS is that anyone where it's bracket, board bracket, office, to change it to executive director, to be
Okay.
consistent with the other statute.
So, but in the statute, existing statute has board, correct? So, because
Right.
that's what we are trying to change.
To make it advisory,
It-
but in the existing statute elsewhere where there are existing advisory boards. So for the other advisory boards, the language in statute is executive director, not office.
No, there's executive board,
No, no.
I mean advisory board and rulemaking statutory board or licensing board that had the ability to license. That was moved last year. And that is the concern where the statute, if there is a conflict, that still has the board, regulatory board versus
Right. But if we're-
OPLC getting that. Is that, that's where my confusion is.
So in existing statute, where where some of the boards are advisory boards today, then the language doesn't have board in there, it has executive director, and it doesn't say office,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So if we're going to change some of these to advisory board, then what we need to do is change board to executive director. Some places in this bill it has it, but other places in the bill, it's replacing board with office, and that's not correct.
Okay, so you clarified one doubt, that is only if the statutory board is becoming advisory board, then the executive director needs to be in place of the board.
Correct.
If it still stays as a statutory board, not all 57 boards are converting that into advisory board.
No, that's
Am I
correct.
correct? So if it is a statutory board, then we don't need to do the executive
Right,
director.
and we're not dealing with all the boards. We're only dealing with the ones that this bill deals with right now, so.
Yeah, which is advisory, trying
Which we're
to
trying
change
to
it.
change to advisory. We're not going to try and change the Board of Medicine to an advisory board or anything, so,
That, yeah, but it has on this one. Okay,
yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's. So do we have, you can turn the mic on and introduce yourself, I guess.
I have one recommendation for section D, and I'm putting
D-
something together for Steve
Section
right now.
D,
Section D.
okay.
Minor change. Won't change the meeting, just
Okay, yeah, if you could email that to me and then I'll update this.
I have it on.
Just hand it back to you.
Oh, you have the language?
Yeah, I just
I gave you.
did it right now.
Okay, yeah, if you can get that to us, I'll do
D on the amendment.
On
the
the
email
amendment.
I sent. The email that said draft partial amendment for HB. Oh, okay, so right now it says one member, meaning member of the board, who is a bar member and who is experienced as an appointed guardian ad litem appointed by the executive director. And he's clarifying a bar of the New Hampshire, who is a member of the New Hampshire Bar Association. So it's a member of what?
First bar
Okay.
I ever passed.
What?
I know a lot of bar members, right?
I'm not going to talk what kind of level the bar is.
Angus Bar and Grill.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Just make a note here.
I'm gonna take that.
Yep, change. Dash C colon.
Mr. Chair, if I can just make a comment to Doug. He's working on the language for the line we had that was one member of the Child Protection Agency member. And I was trying to find what in statute. So I tried to look at are any of those other. I was confused at the last meeting when I said Easter Seals. Easter Seals was a child placement agency at one point, which I don't think they still are. That's different than a child protection agency. And so I didn't know what language to use that would encompass both DCYF and other things like KC program. And in looking around at the child protection system seemed to be a term, but legally, I don't know. That's your.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I'm trying to think of a word because agency to me makes me think more official, like a state
Correct.
agency. System, I'm not sure is the right word, so I'm just trying to find one word to plug in.
Yeah. thank you.
Organization. How
Me
about
too.
child protection
Institute-
organization? Which
think
could
that
be
would
a
do it.
state
Opens up
agency
the options,
or
yeah.
a private. Casey Foundation is a private nonprofit, but it's an organization.
Yeah,
That would,
I think
Good.
that would do it.
that would
Thank
cover,
you.
yeah, Easter Seals, CACs. Yeah, I think that organization would be a good.
New Hampshire's-
Yeah, Easter Seals is not a protection agency. It's more a placement and provider of programs for.
Right.
So Casey Foundation is similar to DCYF, a private organization.
Member representing,
Cross out the
a child, right, that makes sense. System that's,
page,
board.
organization.
Okay. All right, so, with the changes that were in that email I sent and the two changes we just discussed, I'd like a motion on adopting the guardian ad litem section, so this is, you know, adopt.
Can I raise one more issue before you move
Sure.
on? Not to slow things down. There's a repeal. The 490C4 is
Page and,
I'm looking for
in the
it,
bill.
right, 12,
page 2,
12, line 28 is a repeal and replace.
yeah,
It's the duties of the board. I just wanted to draw your attention to section G. And I want to make sure everybody's read that language before we repeal it entirely.
we're,
Wait a minute,
page and line again?
Yeah, so it's not in the bill because it's repealed. That's why I want to draw your
Oh,
attention.
it's dropping something.
Oh, it's
think-
the line across. It's
No, no,
crossed
no,
out.
there's
No,
no line
it's just,
across.
it's a complete repeal and replace. So
Because the
the
language in
doesn't
the
show
bill
up.
is repealed and reenacted as, then you don't get any line acrosses.
And it's just,
And what does it do?
so it's, it allows the board, which will change to the executive director,
Yeah.
to, at their discretion, what do they do? Refer a complaint to the appropriate court for investigation, resolution, or other action. It's a may. The referral may be made regardless of whether the allegation or complaint relates to a case which is then pending in court. May be made in lieu of or in addition to any investigatory or disciplinary procedures that the board may itself be authorized to pursue. Gives the board authority to formally resolve complaints by agreement, which we don't really need because of 310. But then the last sentence is the one I believe the executive director testified on. A complaint relating to a trial or judicial proceeding in progress shall be dismissed without prejudice unless the board for good cause votes to
Complaint related-
proceed immediately. So
Do you
before you moved on, I just wanted to make sure you had eyes on that language.
Which one?
So,
'Cause that's
It's in
pure
another
policy.
bill
No,
that was
that's
repealed
policy. All right.
already
And
under
so,
board
as
duties.
I understand it, and unfortunately, we don't have printed copies for everybody, but unless you can look it up on your
I
phone.
can pass this
Yeah,
around
if you
want.
can tell us where to look up, I can look up
Sure,
on my.
it's RSA 490-C,
Hang on one second.
yeah.
So if I could ask one clarifying question while she's looking that up. So Doug, as I understand it, these are duties the board had, and when we repealed the board language to make it advisory in another bill that is being looked up, we now have these duties dangling.
No,
No, this one is just everything else. I did like a comparison. Everything else in this duty section is in this language that we're seeing,
Okay.
except this section. And our big concern is that it was being interpreted, and rightly so, I think, that the office didn't have the ability to follow through on complaints because of just the way the language is worded. But there's a little bit more to it to that. It seems to have this kind of dual purpose where you can have the board investigating a complaint and also the office. I think our concern was with the very last sentence.
RSA, which one again? I'm.
490C4G.
Roman 1,
Roman
letter
1.
G.
All of the citation would be helpful. So I think our concern was with the last sentence, a complaint relating to a trial or judicial proceedings in progress shall be dismissed without prejudice unless the board for good cause. That was our big concern.
Now, would you still leave it the board?
Well, I actually drafted a proposed amendment if you decide to keep this paragraph in. I think,
So
I
what's
think
the
Lindsay,
argument for keeping it in?
Lindsay has I don't think they're,
Uh,
I don't know. I don't know that. I think Lindsay has a concern that this seems to be the court interjecting itself in sort of family matters in a inappropriate way when the board could probably resolve the issue on its own.
So,
But
this-
but I also
I
think
will-
that's a
in a moment.
policy decision.
But just
I'm
so
not
so I
gonna-
understand,
yeah.
I mean, if this becomes an advisory board, so the board would still be looking at individual items, okay.
So I
Representative,
think the policy question is whether or not you want to give us the authority to refer the matter to the court for a separate investigation. And that's really the question. If you don't, then I don't think we need to change anything in 1271. If you think that we should be able to make that recommendation, we may want to add either that language back in or, and then I also have a proposed amendment because of that last sentence. It says a complaint relating to a trial or judicial proceeding in progress shall be dismissed without prejudice. I drafted language, which I guess is a third option where you could add just this language in, and it would allow us to stay a complaint pending the conclusion of the proceeding in court. So we could sit on a complaint without the statute of limitations tolling. But
if
they
you're
also,
passing it off to the court,
yeah, I have a draft if you just,
yeah, Rep.
can I
Brown.
just pass that out.
I was just. Excuse me.
I mean, it's just something I come off
Thank you.
a whole bunch of.
Yeah, very good. You caught up.
Hey, wait a minute.
All right,
I was just going
let
to
him finish.
ask if you would translate that last sentence into English for me. Not being a legal source.
So we have if a complaint comes in, we have a statute of limitations.
Yeah.
And it looks like one of the concerns is the complaint process being weaponized. So parents could file a complaint against a guardian ad litem. If we take this section out, we're under the regular 5-year statute of limitations.
Okay.
What this would do, the language I just proposed, would allow us to stay that procedure so we can just sit on it. And when the court stuff is done, then we can go and do our complaint investigation. And we're not losing that time in between.
Got it. Thank you.
Representative Mangiaputi.
Thank you. So currently, the complaint is when it comes from, what is it, ad litem, right? Or when the complaint comes from parents or non-parent general public, where does that get handled?
Well, in the current law, it says it shall be dismissed without prejudice. So the complainant could complain again afterwards, after the proceeding is over, unless the board for good cause votes to proceed immediately. So right now, unless there's good cause, the complaint's just dismissed, and the complainant would have to bring it before the board again when the court stuff is over.
So follow up, so the board hears the complaint at this time. Board has the responsibility of responding to complaints at this time. I'm trying to understand the statute as
Right.
it is.
Right.
Board has the authority to look at and inform OPLC whether to move forward or not.
That's the way it used to work. I would say under the current procedure, because the office has the complaint and investigation, we would have to present it to the board and then they would make the decision favoring dismissal without prejudice right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose we could still do our investigation and then bring it to them.
So
But
that's what I'm
but I
trying to
also,
understand.
one of the concerns too is that that board doesn't meet all that often.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess the question is there, what's the problem with, instead of holding on to the, if I understand correctly, the options are you hold on to the complaint, and, you know, pending the court thing being done, if basically the office decides, the office could proceed with the complaint right away, but if they think they need the results from the court, this would let them wait and deal with the complaint after. The alternative would be, you know, I don't know, what the board could not act on the complaint if they think they need to wait for the judicial thing and then say, bring the complaint after it's all done, or what are the alternatives?
well, right now it says that it shall be dismissed. So I think they're supposed to get rid of that complaint. I guess they could sit on it, but then you also have the problem of the statute of
Right.
limitations is
I
ticking
understand,
away.
and the
Yeah,
courts can take a long time.
right.
So, but if they dismiss it, can that complaint be brought again later?
Yes, but it would make somebody file another complaint.
Okay, all right, so,
So
Okay.
just to follow up on that, the thought process is that the timing, right? So
It's a
you have a
timing thing.
statute of limitation for 5 years.
Right.
So if somebody brought a complaint and it was dismissed, they have to, you know, and it comes up again within the 5 years, will that, it has to be a separate file?
It would have to be a
complaint.
separate complaint.
Okay, so this response to my focuses on timing for complaints, you know, who's checks and balances. If it comes from parent, it comes from DCYF, it comes from any place, the complaint is addressed or responded. That has to be,
We're going to treat every complaint the same regardless of the source.
okay.
so I'd like to make a motion, which is, yeah, on your suggested change here, we're, you have, unless the office decides to proceed immediately, would that be the executive director or office, which is,
Executive director.
okay, thank you. Thank you for a good catch. That seems to be a problem.
I can go home now.
All right. So what the motion I'm making is to adopt this proposed amendment to add, I guess add back in, or add 490C4E with the change we just talked about of changing office to executive director.
Second.
Second, okay, so that's,
For clarification,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, so it's not solely on executive director. Responsibility does not fall on,
Correct.
okay,
Sure.
I'm okay with that.
Representative Brown?
So, and we've talked about this thank you, Mr. Chair, a number of times. Any time in any statute that it says the commissioner, the executive director, or anything of that nature, it always gives them the responsibility, but it means it gets passed down through the staff as that person may want to pass that down. So whenever it says that in any statute, it never means that the commissioner has all those tasks himself or the executive director. That's how it just is normally worded.
No,
That's all.
I understand there are two different
I think she has different
capital,
questions.
you know, executive director as capitalized and then small case. So it's individual. That's my understanding when Director Courtney said it has to be a person and that has to be the executive director. So that's where I have, the buck stops at the
Right,
directors.
It's their responsibility, but to make sure it gets done, but they don't have to do the work necessarily.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Unless we need further discussion, can we move to a vote on this? Okay. Everyone who approves adopting this change, say aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, next. So we have a number of changes beyond what I had sent out. And that's the change to, they're all to 490, actually looking at here, 490C, thank you. C2. me get the line, actually, I need to get the line numbers here. Oh. Where is it? I just lost where I was. Where is this stuff? Commission. Where's the stuff we were just dealing with?
Well, the changes to the membership is right here, right top of page.
Right, well, we already dealt with that separately, but this last,
It was,
C2, where's C2? Unless I've got the wrong, no, it's
no, this was
C4.
repealed and reenacted right
Okay,
here.
okay, C2.
Line 26 and 27. And then duties is
Right.
line 28.
C1, okay, the membership. So, C2 D and E. Okay, it's really, sorry. So it's really F. And okay. Okay, actually, it was a change to the language I proposed, which is why I'm getting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I had one question about the advisory board versus statutory.
Is it in
Board.
general or a particular page in the line to
There's
look at?
the ones that are listed here, right? All 8 of them
Oh, at
that
the
are
end?
converting. Yeah. And so what is one of the concerns is having done a little bit more research on it, is if it is an advisory board and the licensee or the certificate holder should have more malpractice or insurance,
I don't.
immunity,
Oh, the immunity
liability, immunity.
for the members of the board?
Not the members of the board. If that is taken away from the members, yeah, I just want a clarification.
I
Will it rest on the licensee?
So the
of it?
question is, does it make any change to the licensees?
Yeah.
I can't see it, but
I don't think so. I mean, as far as the board members, they have some protections in other statutes.
it
I don't
doesn't.
think I'm
I
understanding.
mean, the licensees either have a license or they don't, and it's
Yeah.
not affected whether it's an advisory or a
Oh,
statutory board.
correct.
right?
That's
I
correct.
mean,
No, but so the liability
But they don't have-
won't shift.
the liability, when we talk about liability, it's nothing to do with the licensees at all. Okay, the liabilities was with the board members. So there's
Correct.
no change to the licensees.
Correct. So the board members, if you're a statutory board, they have a liability protection because they're nominated from the state. Is that liability protection is still available for an advisory board
I
member?
think it's even better for the advisory.
It's even better for the advisory. board.
Right, didn't we have that conversation
Yeah,
about the
I thought we
Connecticut
did,
case? Or somewhere there was a
Yeah,
case.
yeah, you're right, because they're not making the final decision anymore. They are actually less open to liability issues if we make it an advisory board. So,
So the state is taking up the responsibility
and-
for,
I mean, the antitrust issue is if you have somebody, a market participant, so somebody who works in that field making the decisions. The state doesn't work in the field, so that's not a concern for the state. Antitrust concern, there might be others, but, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but.
One more comment.
Sounds good to me.
Representative Brown.
If I might, thank you, Mr.
Certainly.
Chair. We briefly touched on this, and I know in the original, it's an or as well, but are we all okay with the fact that DCYF could possibly not be on this advisory board? The way it's written, the way it has been written that way too, but you said it generally has been then, but just, are we all good with that, I guess is
I think actually there's not an or in the final. The thing I emailed out, unless I'm looking at a different part that you're talking about, says that section is one member representing a child protection organization in the state appointed by the executive director.
Right, so it might not be DCYF is my
No,
point.
it could include DCYF
But it
or
doesn't-
the private organization.
Which
the
is how
KCFF.
it's written now.
I'm just saying, for the sake of conversation, are we all okay with that might be the case?
And
That
I will point
DCYF
out
might not be
that's
here.
the situation
It is
today.
the situation now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a
so
chance to
I
talk
am
about it.
comfortable, if you're asking
That's what I'm saying.
personally, I am comfortable as long as DCYF or a child protection organization which is involved is represented on the board. I'm fine.
Okay, so I'm going to make.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to make another motion, which is to, if you look at the email I sent, draft partial amendment, this is about the last major bullet, which says replace section 22, page 11, line 35 through page 12, line 25. And that's around the guardian ad litem part of membership, board membership. So the question is, are people okay? The motion is to adopt that with the changes we've made today, which are to part 1C, changing it, it's more, changing it from system to organization, take the D out. And then on D, updating the language to make it clear that they have to be a member of the New Hampshire Bar Association. It's kind of a technical thing. And then also adding back in what's going to become 490C 4E, I guess it's now G, with and the basic thing we just adopted. Okay. So I
So
make,
the E is staying, right? One member.
yeah.
Why did you say it's now G?
No, now E. It used to be G, I think.
No,
Or no, okay, never
there
mind.
is no G.
Never mind.
Yeah, it will
Uh,
become E. Yeah.
Okay, adopt.
If I'm, if I understood.
Just out of curiosity, will the members on the board get mileage or, I know
I
without
mean,
compensation?
it's really not pertinent to this. We need to move on. I apologize, but this has taken a lot longer than I'd hoped, for good reason, but, okay, I've made the motion. Somebody want to second it? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none. All right, that's what we're going to do. Okay. I guess the last thing on this one is, the motion is to adopt, to keep in the bill the sections about guardian ad litem with the changes we've just voted to do, which is, all the stuff we've been discussing. So, okay. So that's my motion. Does somebody want to second it?
Uh,
All right, any discussion?
the board in, that's number 3 on the original one, right? The convert the guardian ad litem board into advisory.
Yep,
Did the membership go down to 3 or that was, we had that discussion, but I wasn't clear.
We cut it from 7 to 5, right?
right, and so
7 to 5.
instead of going to 3, it's to 5,
Okay,
because we added some back in.
We took out the senator and the representative.
Right. So, if there's no further discussion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. We are done with the Guardian ad litem board, and we're going to move on to the Manufactured Housing Installation Standards Board. And I think first we have a couple people. I'll let you folks go for the moment. And this is page 20, line 16 through page 24, line 34. And I know there's some people here who want to speak on the, hopefully briefly, on the manufactured home installation part. And yeah, if you can introduce yourselves for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Karen Susi. I work at Sheehan Finney Capital Group, and I'm here representing the New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association.
Morning. My name's Eric Kaufman, and I serve on the Insulation Standards Board.
Okay, thank you. So what, your comments on this section?
Yeah, we have some concerns about the proposed changes to the makeup of the board and setting term limits on that.
Okay, and anything you're going to speak, please mention page and line number if you
Okay.
could.
Page 20, and then it's basically lines 26 through 36, and then page 21, lines 1 through 10.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Right. In particular, if I may,
Yep.
you know, we're going from a 9-member board to an advisory 3-member board, you know, including installer of the home, structural engineer, dealer, retailer, all being appointed by the executive director, which was formerly the New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association would nominate people to this board, certainly because we have a better handle, quite frankly, on members of our industry.
Okay.
Now it would be the executive director, and I guess we're trying to find out what would be the criteria for the executive director to
So
choose
what
and
I-
nominate.
What I'd like to do is first deal with who the members are and deal
Sure.
with how they're picked second, because I may have them come up and speak on it, on their take on it. So I know the membership's going from 9 to 3. And that's generally being done with, when they're moved to advisory board, but as in the previous one, we didn't bring it down and brought it to 5 instead. So, I mean, if there's ones you think are critical to be put back in, let us know. Representative Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in any case, a board of 3, I know there must be some reason somewhere that someone decided to go to this number, but boards of 3, I think can be complicated. It takes one person being out to make it, to being absent, to making it really complicated, but seems like 5 is a better number, but there must have been a reason someone went to 3. I don't know what that
well,
was, but
The info we heard from the governor's representative was that, you know, I don't know about in this case, but in general, there have been problems. The appointment process is very time-consuming and complicated, and in some cases, they had trouble finding people. And I think they went and did this through all the boards, and some boards it is an issue, other boards it may not, which is why we're looking at the membership on each of these. So they kind of did it all the same. Representative Manchapudi.
Thank you. Is there an issue with the quorum and how often the board meets currently? That was one of the issues that was addressed.
The board only meets as necessary, so it's typically not an issue. We have had some issues with getting a quorum, but some of that I think has more to do with the fact that it's 9 people right now. I think, as
What-
Representative said, if we move down to
Oh, right.
5, I think that would be a much better number, and then I don't think getting a quorum for any of the meetings would be an issue.
Okay, so if we were to add 2 additional people on, you know, which ones would you suggest? I don't have a problem doing that.
Mr. Chair,
Representative
one
Manchapudi.
more question in terms of how many times did the board meet in 2023?
Why don't we get that from OPLC, and I'd like to get an answer to this question, and then we'll move on if we can do that.
On who we should add.
Yeah,
I mean, in my personal opinion, I would probably say a code official would probably be somebody that would be good for that. And then an owner or operator of a community. It doesn't need to be, I don't think we need to set a,
each different size, but
yeah,
just
we don't
one,
need to
one,
set a
own-
limit on
I know
size.
one owner
Yeah,
operator.
One, it's sort of the same, one and the same.
Okay, all right, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say about other parts of this? And then we'll move on to deal with how the board membership's selected.
Yeah, with the term limits,
All right,
on that, I'll speak to that. It's currently, I think the board, if you were to switch to this, everybody on the board except for maybe 2 people wouldn't even qualify the board. And this board has been in existence since around, I think, 2005, 2006. And many of those people on the board have been on the board this entire time. And I think it's important to keep those people on the board or let them serve for as long as they want because of the knowledge base they have with creating this installation standards to begin with. There also aren't that many licensees in the state, and I actually think finding people, if you start setting term limits and people can't be on the board anymore, finding people that want to serve on the board could be found to be very difficult.
Okay, so you,
Excuse me, which page and line are we on with term
21.
limits?
he's on page 21,
21
lines
line,
9
9 and
through
10.
10, 9 and 10. Um, So I guess I can see that for, you know, the people that work in it, the field. So certainly the installer and maybe the dealer retailer, but is there a shortage of structural architect or engineer? Maybe that is. And then since we're reducing the number of owner operators, I mean, are there enough of them that that position could be limited to how long they could be on? Or, you know, would that be okay? Is there an argument against it?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that those issues arising. I mean, it's kind of manufactured housing installation is kind of a niche to begin with. There aren't a whole lot of people that just handle this area. So it's not, I wouldn't call it a growing area either. Would probably be going, I would say it's going the opposite direction with the people that are
Right,
involved.
if I can interrupt, I think I understand the reason for the installer and the dealer or retailer having a limited number of those, and so maybe not limiting how long they can serve, but are there the same concerns for the structural engineer and the owner operator members?
I'm not sure we could comment about the structural engineer.
Okay, and owner operators?
I would say it's the same concern as co-ops become a bigger thing and more communities go.
Louder?
Yeah,
I would-
and
yeah.
be near the mic, yeah.
As the owner operators and co-ops become more prevalent in the state, we're losing the owner operator side of it. So there are becoming less and less of those as well.
Right, and right now, there's, I guess, 4 owner operators total on the board. It looks like 2 of the small, 1 of the,
Yeah.
yeah. 2 of the small, 1 of the,
One of 100 or more and one of.
1 of 100 and less, that's 2. And, okay, no, that's it. There's 3 right now.
Yes.
So-
Is an F one also?
No, that's
Oh,
somebody
that's
else.
a co-op, that's a co-op, sorry.
Right. Right, so, I guess what I'm getting at is, has there been a problem finding those people who are owner operators of parks today? And you're saying there may be fewer available?
I can't, it's tough to speak to that just because our board has mostly been made up of people that have stayed on the board for such a long period of time that it's been very infrequent where we've needed to actually find somebody new to serve on the board.
Okay, so separate from the membership, Representative Brown.
But just, thank you, Mr. Chair. Backing up a little, maybe OPLC can answer this and maybe
I
you
was
can.
going to have them up shortly.
Yeah, but why, I'm not seeing a consistency in all these rules we're looking at on term limits. Seems like some of them don't have any term limits and some of them do.
Yeah, thank you. So any comments on anything other than board membership and the expiration? And then we'll have OPLC up to,
No.
Representative Gould. yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. So we're removing for, a bunch of owner operators, one of which is a cooperative one. I'm assuming the language we replace this with, given your comment, that the field, if you call it, I don't know what you call it, is moving, the business is moving toward a cooperative model, that you would want it to be either or, that the language be open enough that that one member could be from a cooperative model or it could be from an owner-operator model.
That's actually a good point.
If I may.
Yeah.
There is no, it's my understanding that under the current board that requires a cooperative member, that has been vacant. They have not been able to fill that.
But for future use, if we leave the language open and it can be either or, does that give the board more flexibility
Or
as we move ahead?
It'd be the appointment person. flexible.
Right. The board composition.
Yeah, I mean, if it has a cooperative now,
Yeah.
you can't really speak against it.
Thank
I
you.
think I would definitely want an owner operator on there then as well, certainly, for the 5.
Right, if we, well, and we already talked about, you wanted a municipal code enforcement officer, we need an odd number, so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, well,
one more question for these people
Yes.
that are there. And so we went from 3 to 5, so you added the coding person and
I think an owner operator.
owner operator. Instead of 2, we'll have 1 owner operator.
There's actually 3, because on the next page, there's an owner operator of big parks and the 2 are of small parks, so.
And a co-op, and,
Right, right.
yes. Co-op is the rocks we are talking about.
Correct.
Correct. And we are putting building code person. We don't need the fire chief?
I would say that the building code inspector also deals with fire code, I believe, and so I think that'll cover both usually.
Okay. And I see Representative Gould's point, instead of just saying owner operator, there's 1 small park under 100, 1 larger than 100. Those 2, making it both either or, including rocks, would make it attractive going forward, rather than coming to change the statute again. If you're making the shift, keeping that option open.
I get that point. Representative Brown?
Okay, so is there some hesitancy and some, on the part of the board, and some conflict, potential conflict between co-ops and
Owner-operator.
owner operators, where there may be some hesitancy to say we won't have an owner operator and only a co-op? Am I reading between the lines correctly?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay. So, and follow up,
Follow up. Yep.
knowing that there's one locally where I live, one that became a co-op, I know that there was quite a bit of controversy there. So I can understand where the Manufactured Housing Authority Board might not want to have only a co-op. I think I might understand that if that makes sense.
Okay, and I also, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought I heard 2 answers to a question that were different. Is there currently, I thought somebody said that the co-op position was vacant?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. If you could,
Mr. Chair, because there's only 10% co-op in New Hampshire versus 90% of mobile park in Vermont is co-ops.
Well, I have to say there's 147 resident-owned communities in the state that far outnumbers the privately owned in the state. So it's,
okay. If you could take a seat and have the folks from OPLC come up. So my first question may be more of a policy one. If you don't have an answer, that's fine. And that is around the owner operator versus co-op members, if we're not going to have both. I mean, is there anything you can say on that?
I think that as it came up, we don't have a preference. I think the change that was proposed through the governor's office was because that position has never been filled. So
Which one, the co-op
the
one?
cooperative one, as was mentioned, it's vacant now, but it has never been filled as
Okay,
a board
and-
member.
And to represent Manchaputi's point, I mean, if we put it as owner operator or co-op, that wouldn't, presumably wouldn't cause a problem. And if there's a move in the future, as there might be to, predominantly co-op at some point, then that would offer the flexibility. Does that seem reasonable?
That's how I would see it as well, yes.
Okay.
Question 2.
Representative Manchaputi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So currently, there are 4 members. so we're cutting down to 2 from the community, which is the housing, the owner or co-op. It used to be 4 before.
We're cutting down to 1, not 2. With an or. So it'd be 1 or the other, but that's still 1 member.
Oh, so I'm completely off now. Line 3 on page 21, line 1 on page 21, and 35
Yep.
On page 20.
Right. What we're proposing is to add back in 2 positions.
Correct.
One of them is page 21, line 5, which is the municipal building code official.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is, one position, which would either be an owner operator of a manufactured housing park or a member of a cooperative manufactured housing. Yeah,
And without a lot limit, right?
right.
Right.
No size limit, just any.
So can I ask for a clarification on page 20, line 33? One dealer or retailer is not a owner of the park.
Correct. It's a dealer or retailer of the
So-
manufactured housing.
So,
So
I have a
what you'd end
problem.
up with is 1 installer, 1 dealer or retailer, 1 either owner operator or a member of a co-op, and the code enforcement person, and that's what we would have. So you'd have 1, right,
We keep A, B, C.
yeah.
and that,
I would have a problem with that because the consumer, in terms of whether co-op or manufacturing park, has 1 seat at the board, whereas the provider, like if you put in that, the structural engineer we need, the dealer, and installer, these are the provider of these more, so they have a much large, are you following me?
yeah,
I
no,
think
am. I
the
get it.
clarification, as I'm thinking about it and hearing you talk, is that the difference in this board is that they do not have a public member like many of our other boards do. It is the like cooperative or owner member, someone that's a owner operator. So that's I think what it could be sort of related to.
Correct. You hit the point. So I want to make sure the public member is the consumer, and we want to have a good representation, both owner of a park, also the cooperative, so there's more voice, equal voice.
So I understand the concern. So I see 2 ways of dealing with it. One is to stay at 5, and we would have to drop either an installer or the dealer or retailer, or say it would be an installer or a dealer or retailer. So that's an option. And then add a second 2 members who are owner operators or members of co-op. I mean, that's one way to go. The other way, we'd have to add, because we have to stay odd, we'd have to add 2. And so then we could add, I suppose, but then you'd have,
A public member who is a resident of the home is different than an owner operator, right?
It is different. I was just trying to say that this board is unique in the fact that it doesn't have a public member. So I think because of the uniqueness of the profession and the owner operator or cooperative piece of it, trying to get the voice to be more specific to the actual profession is why we wouldn't see that there. So but I was just trying to say that's why there's a little bit of that uniqueness here, but where that piece comes in.
I thought we heard earlier though that, and from what I've seen in the bill, that for the advisory boards, generally the public member is not included.
Correct.
So,
But there also isn't one currently, was sort of my point.
Right. Residents of trailer parks have never had a voice. And we had a hearing, if you all remember, where the residents were quite concerned about not having a voice and about the impact on their lives because these are their homes.
Mr. Chair, if I can
Yeah.
that was my
I
concern.
understand. Do you have something, Representative Brown?
No, I was gonna say something politically incorrect. so
No,
it's-
no.
What about if we added two more and
Yeah.
make this a board of seven,
Yeah.
and we add two to the either or?
Add two or make it two? Make it two.
Make the one two that's an owner operator or co-op. Keep the or language in there, but have two positions under that category, and then add a public member who is a resident of one of these parks or cooperatives.
Well, then they couldn't, well, if they're a member of the cooperative, if they're living in the cooperative, they're an owner. That's kind of what a co-op is.
So that's what I'm asking. What does that mean?
Yeah,
Owner
actually, if
operator.
you'd like to come up and to the mic and provide some, I was going to get you before we decided something. But yeah. So first of all, before you get up, do you see any problem adding a member from the OPLC's functional point of view, adding a member who is a resident, I guess, in a park, but not a co-op? Well, no. we
No,
can
we're
deal with-
adding two.
We can deal with that, adding two, right. If you want to come up and if you can help us.
Oh, look, they can all sit together.
We don't have enough cable to give them another mic. do
Right,
we?
that is an issue. Well, but that, but,
But we're taking that out of everyone. Now it comes up. There's people are not represented there who advise on the safety of these buildings.
right, but there could be concerns about if they get overboard in the cost or two. I mean, I don't know. All right,
So we're turning every board that's 3 into 5 to deal with this.
yeah, I'm hesitant to go beyond five, but Representative Brown,
So, correct me if I'm wrong, which could very well be the case. When a person is a resident, they buy a mobile home in a park, they should understand what their rights are and how the process works. So to come here later and say, I don't have a voice, don't they already know what their voice is when they buy their mobile home?
or put it in the park.
So I think we might be conflating here.
Well, I'm touching on what
okay.
these guys said about residents not having a voice.
Oh boy, this could be a whole other.
We don't want to go there.
I'm just not sure if it's up to the chair as whether or not it's relevant to this situation.
Well, it looks like people are questioning. So if you could do
Sure.
something briefly, yeah.
Okay, so you have privately owned communities and you have resident-owned communities. Okay, I represent the privately owned communities.
And what do you mean by privately owned communities? So a business owns the park? Not
Correct.
the people living in it.
Correct. In the resident-owned communities, the residents own the parks.
Is that what's meant by co-op?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Did you need anything further?
Just a fine
Yeah.
distinction is in a resident owned, they own the land also.
Well, to clarify, it's owns what? I mean, they may own their mobile home, but I'm assuming the company
Owns the land,
the
exactly.
land.
That's the distinction
And
between
so
the
you're
rocks.
paying, you're paying to keep your mobile home there.
Like an
Correct.
association. a condo association.
Well, that's a co-op more.
There's
No.
a fair amount of these that aren't in communities. Right. People just own them.
Right.
Right, well, if they own the land and they own the mobile home and it's one on a piece of land, then none of this applies.
Who's representing them?
Well, they're not affected by this, I don't think.
Okay, I get it.
They are?
They are?
So if I may just further clarify,
Yeah,
when we're discussing installing manufactured homes,
yeah.
this was brought into place back in 2005 when HUD, the federal government, said there are too many problems. These homes are not being installed properly. Either they're falling off the foundations. You know, you've got in the Midwest and on the eastern coast, they have hurricanes. We need to do something to ensure that these homes are installed correctly. So HUD said, either you follow our standards, or state of New Hampshire, you come up with your own. And so the state of New Hampshire did that. Now, this is only about making sure that a home is installed properly, whether it's on a private piece of property, whether it's in a resident-owned community, or whether or not it's in a private park. So when I hear you talking about whether or not the voice of a resident in a resident-owned community is heard with regard to installing homes of which they do not install. I'm not sure why we would have that concern in this particular issue.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Representative Gould.
Thank you. So help me understand what, and maybe this is an OPLC, but I think you guys can answer this. What, are there any issues that the board currently or historically has handled that impact the residents? When you hear complaints and you deal with complaints,
It's been a long. It's been a long
If you
time.
get
since
closer to the
It's
mic,
been a
please.
long time since we've heard an issue. There are very few issues because the program works very well, and people tend to do a good job of installing these homes.
so I take back my comment because clearly it must have been a different board or some complaint happening. It had to do with residents and financing and all of that, and you don't
Yeah,
handle that.
Just as purely installation, the
Thank you.
installation of the home on the site. Yep.
Done deal.
Representative Mangiapudi.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for clarifying that. Installing and build retailer code enforcement, that is to establish the home. Once the home is established, running off it, whether the financing comes from HUD or private, or that is not the preview of this board, but do the residents have a way to get to any complaints after?
I think that's actually off topic, because if this board isn't dealing with it, then it's not pertinent to this bill, and we're running late.
And no.
Briefly, yeah.
No, I just have to make sure everyone understands. Under the board and also somehow with the OPLC, with all the changes that are going on, part of HUD, in order to be compliant with HUD, you had to make sure that you maintained a dispute resolution program
Correct.
under the installers board, so that the manufacturer, the installer, and the retailer couldn't each point their finger and say it's their fault, not ours. So it pulled
that's-
everyone to the table. So that's what you're talking about.
Correct. That was my point,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
great. Well, we've got the installer, we've got the retailer, and we've got either somebody who owns the park, or, at least we're proposing, somebody who's a member of one, the co-op thing. Representative Brown.
So who can make a complaint? Who legitimately can make a complaint? So could an individual resident that had a home installed, they could complain to the board it was installed improperly?
That is
So-
correct.
So there is a little piece where individual residents can come to the board. Okay.
Yes. And that's up to a year after the home's been sold.
So I have a question for the lady sitting to the back. Are you here to speak on this, or which item are you? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we're not ignoring somebody on this one. Yes? If you have a.
So if we have to address that the complaints are somewhere, either OPLC takes it or the board takes it, there has to be a channel, because that's the voice of the consumer holding something that may not be satisfactory that was given to them.
Right, okay. And I'm going to actually ask that. Well, can we get OPLC back up here? Thank you, musical chairs.
Do you think you would ever get a member of the public to sit on?
And thank you. And this
don't
is
wanna
why
go
we
there.
love working with our associations as well, because when we have 57 boards, she very eloquently articulated that. So thank you, because
So-
that's the crux of it.
Yeah, so with it, if it moves to advisory board, or maybe even what we did last year, it may already be set. How would complaints be handled?
They would still be processed through the office through what was done last year with 655. So it's consistent as any other board for those complaints. And as mentioned with the HUD requirement, we are working with the board to update their rules, so that way their rules point to that current process, which is in compliance with the HUD process for the complaints. And that's the complaints about the installations.
Right.
That is not the complaints about the parks or the, you know, the after, that was repealed last year. That complaint board was repealed last year and now is with DOJ through any consumer complaints.
protection thing.
Consumer protections, correct.
Okay, and would, you know, what's going on to the rulemaking and all that, would that be significantly affected by moving to an advisory board? Or would it,
What we're seeing with the installers board is that their rules have been expired. There have been a couple of pieces to that. One of them was that they did meet 6 times last year. I'm not sure exactly what delayed the rules from being readopted prior to their expiration. This would just allow, if we went to advisory, the members who were attending or available, I believe there were a couple meetings where people were there, but we didn't have quorum, so there wasn't able to be any votes. If they were advisory with their subject matter expertise, we would be able to move forward in a more timely fashion.
okay, all right. Representative Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question regarding the concern that was brought up on making the change from the board making the appointments to OPLC making the appointments. Can we add language in here that the board will nominate to the executive director member those positions?
Right, that was the next thing I wanted to get to was, yeah, I mean, how would the OPLC actually pick people? And yeah, could we leave in some language that it's nominated, but maybe somehow confirmed or whatever by the executive director?
We talked about this last week.
I think one of the, you can decide, obviously.
right,
One of the
certainly, but
concerns about the nomination, and we've had some conversations over the past few months, is how it's currently listed by needing to be nominated by specific associations. We have gotten a few applications for board members that haven't come that route. And so we've had to then stop it or ask them to get nominated from another agency. And so it has delayed some of those processes. And although we have board members who have been a part of this board for a very long time, many of them are in holdover status as well. So I think there could potentially be language, and we could look at that if Doug is willing to work with me on that, and maybe even the association, to say what would that language look like, so that way it's not each position being nominated by a certain association, but maybe a more generalized nomination
Right,
and definition process.
Right, yeah, because I wouldn't be comfortable requiring people to be a member of a particular association to serve on the board. That's problematic.
Follow up?
Representative Manchaputi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
I was just going to say, it's not either or. The board, professional board, advisory board can nominate or have the option to do that, and OPLC also go look for it. So finally making the decision what's best for the industry
Right. And-
would
and
come up.
I would assume OPLC is going to get ideas on who to put on there from places like,
I was just gonna, anybody can make a recommendation to us.
so if we left it as executive director, it could come from wherever.
It can come from wherever.
Correct.
And I'd actually be,
Yeah, but
Representative
with,
Gould.
just
My
to
fault.
follow up with that one, just with that,
Quickly.
I'm just saying, giving the board and voice also, and not cutting them completely because we have to work with them.
right, Representative Gould, you had it? Okay, all right. So, yeah, we need to, the only other question I had is, does OPLC have any comment on the language that they can't serve more than 2 full terms? There were concerns raised that there may not be enough people available to serve, and if you start doing that.
We could change the 3-year term limit. We could add consecutive, because right now it says 2 full terms. We could add the word consecutive there so that somebody could serve 2, take some time off, come back. There's a couple of options, but I don't think we have strong opinions on that.
Okay, and would there be a problem if we just took that language out? Because right now, there apparently is not a limit on how many terms. Is that correct? It looks like it. Mike?
Sorry,
Thank you.
that's my understanding as well. It might be helpful to leave something in there so that way we don't get in a place where we have someone who is not responsive and we're unable to appoint another person because they're still in their term. So I think there needs to be some sort of language, but that can allow for reapplying or reappointment.
Did you have something? Or else, Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to follow up again. Am I wrong in remembering we don't have term limits on all these advisory boards? Or am I remembering too many pieces of too many bills in the last 3 weeks?
Mr. Chair, the only one I remember Representative Manapucci just came up with, reminded me, was the Judicial Appeals Board the other day. There were no term limits, but normally I've seen term limits on all board appointments. And the concern when you take away term limits is you never know, you might get somebody on a board that, and just even the tendency becomes very insular, or as my colleague to my left likes to say, guild-like. And it just ensures some diversity. But I think we could add a year to the term, go from a 3-year term to a 4-year term. 2 consecutive terms is 8 years. By then, you'd think the board could find a replacement.
And I, as I'm looking at some of our other advisory boards, it does have term limits, but I do think that word consecutive is an important one, because like Doug indicated, that allows for someone to take a break and then come back onto the board. Whereas the way it's written right now is that once you're done, you're done.
Okay, Representative Brown, do you have something or not?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was just going to say, this leaves you no option if you can't find anybody to fill it. But the person that's there would be willing to be nominated, but you can't find another person. A term limit shuts that down. But that's the nature of how that works, I guess.
My understanding is that they are able to stay in holdover status. I don't know the reference to the statute, but that if there is no one to fill that and they want to stay in, that they can stay in that holdover status until someone else applies for that position.
Perfect, thank you.
Right, and also as advisory, reaching a quorum is less critical for immediate things that are needed. Okay, so I'd like to make some motions. We need to move on. As far as the issue of nominated by who and whatever, I would actually like to leave it like it is in the bill, where it's left up to the executive director, but the executive director is not going to I doubt is going to have her pals in there to stack the board, but they're going to have to get nominated, suggestions from someplace. And my guess is that would be, at least partly New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association. So I'd like to make a motion to leave the board appointment the same. Not I'm talking about membership of the board, but how they're appointed.
Nominated?
Or no, appointed.
Okay, yep.
Right. Keep what's in the bill.
Yep.
I would have a problem with that, Mr. It's
Okay.
one vote.
Um,
My concern would
Yep.
be that we are shifting from authority from one to another and not helping with making a sustainable change. That's my,
don't-
I mean, if we put it in the statute, it's fine. Now, Director Courtney is here. She understands what it is, what our intent is, what the, discussion. If there is a change at that level, if nothing in the statute says this is how it was done or this was the intention, there's a nomination you can take. It's easier not to go back to a referral source to say, hey, we don't have to.
So I've got the motion on the floor. Somebody want to second it? And then we can, nobody wants to second it, it'll fail, which is fine. Okay, which I'm okay with. All right. So further discussion. It does limit who they can be. It's got to be some installer manufactured housing. And we're doing the similar thing. It's got a structural engineer with at least worked in the state for at least 5 years. And similarly, if we decide to put back in the building code official, it is nominated by them. I don't know about that, actually, whether the building association should be nominating the code enforcement person. That seems
Mr. Chair, I'm
problematic.
okay with how the members are selected. It's just saying, giving the association an input into nominating process. It doesn't have to say, they have to accept it, but at least the
All right.
OPLC will refer to it.
All right, it's clear, I think it's
Excuse me.
clear, we're gonna have to meet again, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I just want to say on page 21, line 29, it does say the duties of the executive director in consultation with the advisory board shall be, and then it goes into,
Does that include the
Into those
appointing
pieces
people
for-
to the board?
I believe it may, in consultation with my legal counsel. Also, when we're looking at some of our other advisory boards, medical imaging has language in there that under the advisory board established that says the advisory board shall advise the executive director regarding the implementation of this chapter. So it's specific to the structure of the advisory board, and so it states that. So I can email that over, or you can look at that reference, but that might be something, there is already statutory language for our other advisory boards.
Okay,
in
so
line with
that
that.
would, that might change the language on page 21, line 29.
Shall is a better thing than may.
It says in consultation, shall,
Yeah. I'm okay with that as long as there is shall, not may.
okay, so, yes,
Chair, on page 20, line 27, it says that these people will be appointed by the executive director of the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification.
Yeah.
If we insert in consultation with the advisory board right there, I think we
that'd be
cover it.
okay? All right. So
Shall consult.
So let's go, that would be page 20, line 28, because I will not remember any of this, but it's not gonna be. In consultation.
In consultation with the advisory board.
If you just go back to page 21, line 29, shall be. You know, that shall, I think,
There's a shall on the end there.
Well, that says the duty shall be.
But this would make it very clear that the
Clear,
appointment
yes.
would be,
In consultation, yeah.
okay, so I will amend my motion to include that change. So we'll add in consultation with the advisory board on page 20, line 28, or 27 and 28.
I will second it, Mr. Chair.
Well, okay. So we have a motion. I'm just amending the motion if Representative Bailey's okay with that change, since he was the seconder. Okay, so we'll just keep the original motion with that change. All right, so what we're voting on is basically to accept the whole installer board part. It'll become an advisory board. We can change the membership as we discussed, which would be, what's that? From 9 to 5, we'd have owner operator or co-op, one member, and we would add back in the code enforcement person. And then this changes to the language, change from 3 to 4 years as far as the length of the term. And to add consecutive full terms so that people could come back on. And that's what the motion is. So everyone in favor? Oh, wait, you have more discussion? Yep.
No, well, it's a comment, I think, just kind of for the record. I think that making the nominating process, taking it maybe solely out of the hands of the executive director is a good thing, because not myself, but there are a number of people that always question what government is doing, regardless of how good of a job they're doing. Having worked there for 30 years, I know how that works. And people will question it sometimes no matter what. So I think that adding this in to have consultation with the board on nominations will make that process, the perception of that to be more transparent.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
okay.
Rep. I second it. That's exactly was my point. Thank you.
Very good. So, the motion is as described. All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. So we have completed the manufactured housing installation section.
On to massage therapist,
Yeah,
page
this one is
25,
20
24.
Line 35
Line
to
35.
26, line 31. And let me get to that, and OPLC can stay up there.
Mr. Chair, this is one of the boards that they asked, correct, to go on to, it should be an easier transition because they asked.
Actually, I just got a good suggestion, and that is, since we have someone here.
Yes, let's
concerning
move
the
ahead.
Midwifery Council, why don't we move to that?
Yes.
Thank you for that. So that's page 26, line 32. Let me find it here. We'll leave OPLC up there for the moment. So that's there through page 29, line 23. So there's all this stuff. And, okay. So if we go through the changes, and if you need to have a discussion, we can leave time for it, but otherwise, Representative Gould and Bailey, is there something we need to hear, or?
No, we were just, looking at the one we skipped over.
Yes. I was looking for the end page.
Oh, the end page on that one, I believe, is page 26, line 31, unless I messed up. Oh, the midwifery is, I think, page 29, line 23.
It is.
Okay. All right, so going through this, as usual with these things, it makes it advisory. And actually, quick question on the last one, OPLC, how many of these installers are there? Because we get into the question of, one of the arguments for advisory board is but then we'll go to the same question then for midwife.
I don't have that data, but I can get that for you.
Is it fairly small, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
sa-
and we also heard testimony they can't find members of the board because there aren't enough people in the
Right,
profession
okay,
licensed.
so now we're on to, same question actually for the midwifery. How many? Huh? No, the installation of what they work on is a different process, but,
It's a growing profession.
what? Yeah, that's not a licensed profession at all. I can speak from family, anyway. So how many licensed midwives are there about?
It's around 30.
Okay, thank you. No, I just wanted to ask the same question. And and my job is to play straight man. It's an ugly job, but somebody's got to do it. All right, so, let me get back here. So,
Mr. Chair, before we go any, to reduce workforce barrier, those
yeah,
things are
that's-
changed, right?
I sent you the email out
Yeah.
where I have them do it everywhere. I mean,
Okay.
I called all the places, so we're going to do that and the other general changes that we agreed on. So I'm just going to briefly talk through this. So there's what the sections are. So there's the making advisory, which given the small number of midwives, I think is important. Then changes to the advisory council, which we'll need to go through. And the rest of it is mostly, I think, the standard moving to a advisory board. And then there's a couple other things like on page 28, line 22 is taking out the board having fee setting authority, which last year we moved to OPLC anyway. And that needs to be done. And the rest of it is basically part of making an advisory board. So if we actually, probably the best for unless OPLC's got some overall comments, then like to have the person here who's going to, who came to speak, come up and introduce herself and provide input.
I thank you for hearing me today. I'm
Can
Sherry
you get close to the
Stevens.
mic, please?
Yeah,
We
I'm
can pull the whole thing forward if it's easier.
Yep, I'm Sherry Stevens. I'm a New Hampshire certified midwife. And we have 33 midwives currently certified and 3 pending.
As what?
And 3 pending.
Oh, 3 pending.
Yeah, 3 in the process.
Okay. So anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, so my concern is, first of all, putting us into an advisory board in general, because I know we are a small population and we're a small board, but we do deal with maternity care. We take care of pregnant people and we deliver babies. And we think this is a public health issue to have an executive director or somebody other than the experts in the field regulating our board. And this takes away our ability for rulemaking and qualifications, as I spoke to yesterday, as well as, we understand OPLC. We're absolutely 100% behind them doing the administrative work, doing the running the board meetings, certification process, and the disciplinary process. We understand that's happening, and we're okay with that. We've been wanting support for many years. And we're really happy for that. But in terms of moving away from having somebody else telling this profession, what our qualifications are and how we practice is a concern.
I would argue that that's a mischaracterization. It is required in here for all of the advisory boards that they have to do it. Executive director has to do it in consultation with the board. And if they do something wacky anyway, then it's still got to go through the rules, 541A, a process of public comment, and ultimately, you tell Gelcar that they've done something insane. But there's a general feeling from legal liability issues that any board with fewer than 200 licensed people really should become an advisory board, and midwifery one is pretty extreme in that regard. So from a not just liability, but I mean, is it right and ethical for market participants when you have that small number to actually regulate and have direct final control over the rest of the market participants? And I think there's a general feeling that that is not the case, and that that's not appropriate, and
understand.
subject to leaves the state and the board subject to legal action if somebody doesn't like the outcome. So, and we spent an hour plus dealing with that at the beginning of all these hearings.
Right.
So
And I apologize, I wasn't here at that hearing.
I understand.
So the other part is that you have it down to 2 midwives and 1 physician. So there's a big difference between a pediatrician and an obstetrician. One deals with pregnant women, one deals with the baby. They are not the same expertise in any shape or form. And so I know that the current ones that serve on the board have a real issue with that. And the 2 midwives, when we had going back to HB2 and had looked at this, we had asked for 3 midwives and 2 physicians. We do have a public member, which we value very much. I could consider 2 midwives a public member and the 2 physicians. I think they had wanted to put it to 5 so that there's a more majority rule as opposed to 6. 6 has been working great. We've been having monthly meetings. We have quorum. We have plenty of people that have been willing to serve and serve well. We are always, whatever these physicians are, it says expertise with midwifery. That could be friendly or not. There are physicians out there that are not friendly to our profession, and so we are very acutely aware of that, and in our profession as a whole. And having an advisory committee and having this go down to what we were told and what we understand is an advisory committee is they ask the board, the advisory board, our expert opinion, but they can also just not do it, and that we would hope in good faith that is true. And like
Well-
the representative was saying, Director Courtney has been, supportive and wonderful. And if she leaves and we get somebody in that doesn't like midwifery, we're out. They can just stop
I,
our profession.
I,
And it has happened in other states.
right, and okay, so I think going to advisory board is something that we need to do, given the small number of midwives. So we've covered that. However, we're definitely open to changing the membership from what this bill proposes. And so the question
Mis-
is, if you.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question
Let
for
let
the.
me, let me finish what I'm saying, please. So and we'll get to that. My question is, you mentioned 3 midwives and 2 physicians. If we went that route, would it just be 2 physicians or back to 1 obstetrician, 1 pediatrician?
1 obstetrician and 1 pediatrician.
Okay, and then generally the advisory boards don't have public members. And so that would be a 5-member board. Okay, Representative Manchaputi.
Quick question to the midwives. Do you include both nurse midwifery as well as doula midwifery, or just doula midwifery? Doula and midwifery.
It is not doula midwifery, it's a New Hampshire certified midwife. So there's certified nurse midwives under the nursing board,
Okay.
and then certified, New Hampshire certified midwives. We conduct prenatal care, the deliveries on our own, postpartum care on our own.
And one more
Follow-up,
follow-up.
follow-up, yep.
This is all home births. Do you also participate in the hospital births?
We do not participate in hospital births. We do participate in birth center births,
Birthing centers? Is that-
birthing centers. There are 4 of them in the state currently.
Okay, thank you.
Doulas are a different profession.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you mentioned this, that we talked about this earlier, but so the Board of Medicine is not becoming an advisory board.
Correct.
Am I right in that?
Carry on.
Oh, okay. The Board of Medicine is not becoming an advisory board. And I'm not sure what the reason for that is. If
I
it's,
can
if
explain.
it's safety,
No, the issue's different. There are a lot of physicians in the state, and you don't have the problem where a group of market participants are regulating, are regulating a small community of licensed people. If you have, the current membership, you got 1/5 of all practicing midwives on the board, which means they're deciding, and they presumably most of them know each other, they're deciding complaints and who can get licensed to this small group of people. And that's a serious conflict of interest. Whereas with the doctors, there's many more doctors. And so, well, you can argue it's not a non-issue, but it is dramatically less of an issue in that. And then,
The complaints
OPLC can
are
comment.
different. We do not handle the complaints. Currently, OPLC has taken that over.
Yeah.
So that is separated from us.
Can somebody from OPLC get up?
There are very few complaints. There's been 1 or 2 over the 30 years.
Oh, okay, that's great. I guess my question on that is, if there were a complaint, I know the investigation and that is handled by OPLC, but as far as making a decision on whether or not it's valid, would they be consulting with the board now? And also, what's the case if it's advisory?
Yes, even if it's advisory, it would still go to the board for review and subject matter expertise if needed.
Okay.
But if there was an inability to have a quorum or to get to that place, then the statutory authority still rests on OPLC, and so we would be able to move forward with that.
If it's an advisory board.
Correct.
But at a regulatory board, does the board basically make the final decision on it? OPLC would do the investigation and present. Maybe Doug can.
Pushing me out of the way.
I know. We need 3 seats up there, maybe. I don't know.
So we receive the complaint, we do an investigation, we don't need any authority to the board, then we bring that to the board with a recommendation, but the board decides whether or not to move forward with discipline or dismiss the case.
Right.
If they move forward with discipline, the board is the finder of fact. So they kind of say, we think this happened, and OPLC steps in on kind of the legal side, running the hearing officers,
Yeah.
answering, calling balls and strikes.
So today with this regulatory board, we still have the problem where members of this very small group of people is making decisions for a relatively small number of members in their profession, and that's problematic.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Representative Montepudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another quick question for the midwifery. Is this spread across, obviously it's spread across the state. Is this addressing the pockets of rural pockets where the access to the hospital or access to healthcare for pregnant women is addressed?
We are very much concerned about that and the closing of the different birthing hospitals. There are midwives located in all areas of the state. There's probably one in the North Country, so that is an issue. But that, again, getting more midwives into the state and more midwives practicing is our goal. And we are looking at being able to support the doctors and the clinics and things like that with our care to be able to reach out to the rural pockets. And we do, because we are experts in home care and we can go and do home visits, you know, and I've suggested that we make a partnership where we could easily do a prenatal visit or doing a blood pressure or something like that, and then reporting back to the doctor if that was their high-risk
Okay,
patient.
I mean, this is really not
Yeah,
pertinent to the
that's
bill.
different.
Please,
But,
we
sorry.
need to stop that because we actually have a chance of getting done today other than approving the final amendment.
Sorry.
So I'd like to make a motion, which is to adopt a section on midwifery with the change of the membership of the board, changing it to 3 midwives, and I think there's a certified, yep, and 1 OB, and we'll put back in the 1 OB and the 1 pediatrician
With expertise.
with the, it's the current language that's in there with this pertinent experience. I just take the current language and put it back in for those 2. And
So you're making the change on line 8 of page 27, instead of 6, going to 5 members.
right, there'd be a number of changes. It would go to 5 members. The number of midwives would go to 3 rather than 2. And we would put back in on lines 16 through 18, or 16 through 19, the doctors with the appropriate representative. Well, first of all, I put the motion on. Does somebody want to second it, and then we can have discussion? Okay, fine. Procedural. All right, Representative Brown.
Yep. I don't know if it's listed in duties somewhere else, but do we want to include, as we did in the last one? So now on page 27, line 10, midwifery council appointed by the executive director in consultation with the board, is what we did last time.
Right, so you're looking at
Line 10 after the bold.
Okay, so that's page 27, line 10.
In, what did we
with,
say?
with consultation of the
Whatever you-
advisory
yeah,
board.
Whatever you said in the last one.
Shall consult.
No, that's not how, no. The shall came after the in consultation on the last.
But it could be the executive.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I
okay
think
with that, but
We can, Doug, if you can get up here. If we just say the executive director of the Office of Professional License and Certification in consultation with the board, and we're talking about page 27,
line 10.
line 10.
I think that creates
That
a
makes
requirement
it's a
for us to
requirement.
work with the
Okay,
board.
that's what I was thinking.
It's not a may, so that's something we
You
would
were
do.
saying you will do this.
We will do this even without the word shall. It's kind
Okay.
of
I'm fine with that. So I will
Thank you.
update my motion to include that, and if Representative Brown, the seconder, agrees with that?
I agree with that.
All right, fine. So that's the motion to adopt this section with the change of adding that language, that they have to consult on the appointments. 3 midwives, 1 OB, 1 pediatrician, raising the total to 5.
As long as that is there, I'm
Yeah.
fine with it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. So, and just a procedural thing, when I'm going to do like I did before, I'm going to take the list of all the changes. I will update it with this stuff and I'll send it out to people and look at it. I'll try and, do it accurately. And then what we may do at a future hearing is throw this one at the top and get a formal vote on approving the whole thing. So, okay, we're done with the midwife one. Thank you. What's that? No.
Thank you.
Thank you, though, yes. I mean, you can still submit written comment to full EDNA if you'd like, so. Okay, let's go back to combining the advisory board, which is already an advisory board, massage therapists and the board of reflexology
Page 24, line 35.
through 26, line 31, yes.
Mr. Chair, this is the one which has more members. It's more than 200, correct? And they asked to be done.
Yeah, if OPLC can kind of give an introduction to what's going on with this.
So massage is already an advisory board. They do have more members, but the reflexology and structural integrity and Asian Body Works does not. And so they are looking to merge
They're about
those
how
boards.
many?
I will get that for you.
About-
And just so you know, for home installers, we currently have 64 licensed home installers.
Oh, geez, okay. So that's well under the 200 thing. Okay. So the issue on the board side, I mean, the number of licensed people is reflexology, and then we can fix that by merging them with. Okay, so this is starting on page 24, near the bottom at line 35, through page 26,
31.
31, right. Thank you. And so so you said this request came from the Board of Reflexology, or where did it?
Okay. I'm not sure if it came from the board, but I know we have not heard any opposition on this.
I think we've even had conversations with them and they agree with the change.
Okay,
But Lindsay would have had those conversations.
So line 11 is the major change, right?
right, and.
That's my recollection, Mr. Chair.
Right, and it looks like, and there was no concern about the membership of the board or anything else raised?
A quick question for OPLC. Even though it is more than 200 members, it's close to 300 or 400 combining, would that make a difference for advisory or statutory?
Well, it's already advisory, both of them are already advisory, so that's not an issue for us.
Good question, actually.
But
No,
but
one is advisory and one does not have a board.
is that true?
I think they're both
They're
advisory
both
boards right
advisory,
now.
that's
Yeah, we're just
actually
merging
what
two.
the analysis says anyway.
And
And,
it already is 5. We don't have to worry about that.
right, I mean, I'm going to make a motion and then we can have discussion afterwards, and that is to adopt or to keep this section as is.
Okay.
Well, this is the section on the merger of these two boards, which is page 20, sorry. It what I just said, yeah, it starts at, let me look at, I've got it all.
Line 35
Okay, I'll put that on page 24, line 35, through
through
page 26,
line 31.
line 31, yeah, that's the motion, to keep that as is. I think, you know, an issue, I mean, I know she's looking up how many reflexologists, but there have been problems.
21.
21, oh geez. And so, even advisory. So have there been problems just getting people to serve on that board, or has that not been a problem?
Correct. We do have 3 members on that board now. But it has been about trying to find times when they can meet and having quorum. And again, the issue of the, 3 members and 21 active licenses.
Even though they're advisory, there's still issues with that, right? Okay. Do I have a second for that motion?
Yes. One more question.
Sure.
Asian arts is part of reflexology or Asian body arts, reflexology, massage? There are 3 different licensed professions.
So there's currently the Board of Massage, and then there is the Board of Reflexology. I want to get the Structural Integrators and Asian Body Work. That is one board. Those 3 license types, and in that board, there's 21 licensees.
Okay.
Thank you.
So any further discussion before we move to vote? Representative Brown?
Yes, thank you. I don't see anywhere in here the similar language to having the executive director do the Even
all.
regardless of the in consultation, unless I just am missing it.
Yeah, where's the appointment stuff?
It's usually in with the structure of the board itself.
It is on page 25, line 21. Members shall be appointed. Oh, sorry.
It just, that's, and
Line
you're
18.
hitting
The
my point
board-
exactly. It just
yeah.
says they shall be appointed, but
Yes,
How?
24.
Yeah, that's
Page,
interesting.
page 25, line 24, the board shall advise the executive director regarding the implementation of this chapter. And then up above on line 18, it says the executive director shall establish the advisory board.
And so that gives
So
her the
some of
authority.
this wouldn't be bolded because it's existing.
Existing, so that gives her the authority to make the appointments, and it requires that she do that with the advice of the board.
it's saying the same thing in a circular fashion.
It's
Thank
doing
you.
it differently, yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
The word shall is there, so there is a consultation.
So a lot of this language was lifted from existing statute. We didn't rewrite. So that's why if there's
It's different, yeah.
inconsistencies.
Um,
It just as long as everyone understands that is what that means, right?
And ultimately the courts, but.
Well, right. And the
So,
state important,
do we have to have any further discussion, or can we move to a
Yeah,
vote?
it's double negative, triple negative makes it positive.
I think you're right.
Okay, all in favor of doing this, keeping it as is? Anyone opposed? All righty, so we are done with the merge of these two boards. We only have,
Septic system evaluators?
well, we have the septic system, and then we've got the Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators. So let's do septic system next.
Or, how about the 8, the
Eight,
nursing home? That's a
That-
small
I just
group.
said, I just said that's another,
Yeah, that's a small one.
right. I mean, we don't have anybody here to speak on either one
No,
of those.
that's a quick one.
Yeah.
That's the board you just repealed in 14.
No, that was 9.
Oh,
A Board of Registration of Medical Technicians, and we already
Okay.
agreed, the subcommittee agreed to pull that out. The ones that I think are left are on the analysis 7 and 8. The septic system evaluators turn them into advisory, and the same thing for the Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators.
That's what I have too.
So unless there's a reason to take them in a different order, I was going to take them in order here, and that would be the septic system.
I don't know if there's a reason, but the nursing home administrators was at the request of the board.
Okay, let's do that one first. That might be easier.
Okay.
Page 34, line 6. Let me get to it. And that goes through, so this is nursing home. And that is page 34, line 6, through page 39, line 6 as well. Okay. If you can just give an overview of what's going on here and who was okay with it or not.
So currently we have 155 active licensed nursing home administrators in the state. The board has been supportive of moving to an advisory board. They are able to provide insight and support. They do attend their meetings regularly, but I believe they understand the change to be advisory would be helpful in that they are a small board and very involved with each other and all of the licensees.
Okay. And they didn't have a problem with the proposed board membership going down to 3?
Not that we've heard, no.
Okay.
So they are okay with 3-member.
Representative Bailey.
Are there only
All right, go up to the mic.
Are there only 155 nursing homes in the state? Or is somebody going unlicensed or?
I don't know the answer to that. I think some of the nursing homes fall under more than one administrator. So, like larger corporations like Genesis might have a nursing home administrator that covers 3 or 4 different locations. But this is one of those boards where DHHS does the licensing of the facilities. We license the profession.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 county and rest of it private.
Okay, so, I'll do it, I'll make a motion to keep this as is in the bill. And I need a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And any further, discussion before you go to a vote? Representative Brown?
I'm just trying to follow up on the appointment piece again, the nomination and appointment
Okay,
piece,
good.
that's all.
Yep.
Because a lot of that was stricken.
On page 34, line 21, 22, appointed by the executive director.
It's the same language like the previous one.
Is it
Page 34,
In
where line 15 to 18, the executive director shall
consult with
consult.
the advisory board
Or-
to established. That was,
And that got left in that general language, right? It did.
yeah. And the stuff, the workforce barrier stuff, I took out.
Yeah,
along with the
right.
rest, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
Okay, any further discussion? We can move to a vote. All right, all in favor of keeping this section as it is in the bill?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, great, 5-0. All right. In that case, we have one more. And we get to deal with sewage, septic evaluators. So that is, let me make notes. And that's page 29, line 24, through page 34, line 5. Let me get to the start of that. And if you can give kind of any introduction to what the deal is, how many of them there are, what was behind this?
I believe this comes down to the numbers again. There's about 135 licensed septic system evaluators, which has also, and we've also seen some quorum issues with this board, and so this will assist in those meetings being able to happen without quorum. So in 2023, they had 6 meetings scheduled and 3 of them were canceled. In 2022, there were 5 meetings scheduled and 2 of those canceled. So in 2022, there were only 3 meetings. In 2023, there were 3 meetings as well. So this will assist in the operations and licensing of this profession.
Has there been much in the way of complaints they've had to deal with, or
I don't have those numbers, but I could gather that information.
that's all right. Any questions from the committee?
You already asked one. So how does the complaint now flow through?
It's the same as all of the other board processes. So the complaint comes through the office. It is reviewed and investigated by the office. That is then brought to the board to decide the next steps and process like the other regulatory boards.
The statutory one's not advisory,
Correct.
regulatory, yeah. Representative Bailey, of course.
I notice it's septic system evaluators as opposed to installers. Does that imply it's for existing septic systems or somehow, or?
Are the evaluators the ones that approve plans for, what do they do actually, I guess?
I'm looking it up.
You should know this.
If I may, I should know this. The Board of Septic System Evaluators is established to set minimum standards and guidelines to ensure that licensed evaluators have a level of knowledge. Well, yeah, that's kind of
But what do
obvious.
evaluators do?
Hang on a minute.
He was in DES for a lot of years, so. But this is more informational.
It doesn't say that in here.
Unless we need an answer on this, I'd like to move.
Just curious.
Somebody
mean,
want to
it-
make a
it-
motion on this? Well, I'll make the motion.
It could certainly be that if you have a question about a septic system, you have someone come in to assess its condition. Maybe that's an evaluator. I'm guessing that.
I mean, I will say, I just last year spent a ton of money replacing my septic system, and we had to get plans drawn up, and somebody who was licensed, I guess, had to approve the plans, and I'm wondering if that's that person.
I believe that's the process. Trying to read this and life experience, I believe that you have someone who does the plans
Right.
and installs it, but then you have to have someone come out like a building code inspector or
Well, yeah,
something
I
that
mean,
has to
we have-
approve
The
it.
surveyor has to come out, they provide input to the engineer draws the plans, and then there's somebody that has to approve those plans, and some towns, the building inspector gets involved too, ours does.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
My husband was a licensed septic,
Oh.
and we just had this discussion the other night. So I apologize, I missed your
No,
whole
great.
conversation, but I can confirm that once it's all laid in place, somebody comes and inspects it. In a case he talked about in Henniker, it was the building code inspector for the town.
But what does the evaluator do, the septic system evaluator? What's their part in this whole process?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Is
kept-
it,
he
if
kept
Bill,
it-
if you're watching,
He
could
kept
you
it
go
secret,
and
he
call
kept it
in?
secret from you. All right, Representative Manchaputi?
Yeah, so does the evaluator also looks at the leaching and all that
That's
stuff?
part of the whole septic system.
Okay.
I will say that this bill wouldn't change the scope of practice.
Okay, so it's really not pertinent. Not pertinent. Okay, so I made the motion to keep the section as is. I need a second. All right, Brown. Any more discussion needed before we go to a vote? I don't hear anything. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. And if I'm looking at this correctly, we are done, except what I will do is, like I did for, what?
Did we go back to that massage there?
Yeah, we did it. So, as I did with 1410, I will finish that right up on the changes. It'll go to OPLC for an amendment, and I will send it to OPLC. And then, I mean, I could send it out to everybody as well at the same time, and that way you could catch anything I did wrong.
Mr. Chair,
sounds good.
just for my clarification, so
Yep.
we did do the acupuncture license and family mediator, that was not
which
done or
one?
that was let?
Which one?
The acupuncture licensing, and that was done as an advisory board?
Which
or-
one is that?
I don't, the number one and two.
Oh, yeah, we did that the first one.
Number one and two, the family mediator, I don't
The
remember.
family
finish-
mediator we finished this morning. We worked on last time, and that was the guardian ad litem stuff.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah, I think, so let me finish with the process. So I will send it to OLS, I will get an amendment, and at some other subcommittee meeting, I will add this bill at the top, and then we can formally vote to adopt whatever OPLC comes up with or find problems.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
guardian ad litem is number 3. We didn't do number 2. Converts the board of family mediator
We did, actually, we did. Although.
today?
No, earlier. At least that's in my records.
We did that right in order. We went in order through everything. The only thing that went out of order was the massage therapist.
And eliminating the medical technicians one, since we got rid of that in 1410. Let me see. We're trying to settle on whether everybody's in agreement on that. No, I don't think that's a requirement. Although so are we okay on this? We're good? Okay, I'm going to close the subcommittee work session, House Bill 1271. And as I said, one of the other ones I scheduled, I'll put at the beginning once I've got a thing from OPLC and we can approve it, hopefully.
So do you want to look at the schedule now?
No, what I asked I don't want to look at it here. What I want to do is have everybody tell me when they're available or not available for the week of March 4th and the early part of the following week. Because Carol wants to exec all the bills by March 13th, or actually, is that maybe the full following week, actually, I should say.
4 and 7 is
Let me, what, email, I cannot remember anything.
March 13th is when, yeah, she's got exactly.
Right, so here's the deal. Anything we have left, we're gonna have to complete before March 13th, and we're not gonna meet the week of the 24th through the 3rd. And so I'm hoping as many days as possible in that first week of March
Yeah.
and the first couple days of the next week that, you know, people be available, but let me know. And what I'll do is I'll take hopefully all the days that we're all available. And if that's not enough, I'll have to talk to Carol if we can get somebody else as a sub. Because we have to get done. And also, as I said, I was worked to get rid of some of our bills off to other subcommittees. But the big thing is we have to do, well, we got 1222 and I think 1408. You'll get a new, if it hasn't come out yet, you'll get a new notice. And we'll start next Tuesday with 1408, which is another 40-some page thing like this.
And we're off tomorrow.
Correct, because
They're off tomorrow.
Various-
Off Monday also.
Oh,
The
little
19th.
quick announcement, Glenn, before you leave. Our black sheep had triplets this morning. She's 1 year old. 2 of them weren't doing well, but Bill is committed to helping me get here on time. So I'm praying and say prayers for the 2 that aren't doing well. They were triplets, boys.
I don't know what's typical for sheep.
Well, for
Oh,
Finn,
really?
sheep, multiple births are typical. And I talked to the midwife lady. She was mentioning a death board review. I mentioned to her, you guys can handle that with policy. So she was
And the emails come out for the revision to Tuesday's meeting. So it's 1222 and 1408. And we'll dive into 1408 and get as far as we can. If we can get it all done,
I'll try to do it.
I'll be happy. But so, yeah, actually what people might want to do is, you know, take a look at those 2 bills. So at least you have some thoughts
Right.
on where to go with
And
them.
that we can consolidate our thoughts and we can say,
Because we're going to be.
you're laughing.
See, yeah,
Hey, if you don't laugh about stuff, you know, you might as well.
you can have fun anywhere, you know.
All right, and thank you everybody for being here. We did close the thing, so you're not trapped, although you're welcome to watch our banter.
Thank you, Representative Dolan, for participating over there.
Yeah,
You can stay for, where's your farm? Warner.
Okay, so we're in,
Nice job.
Andover.
thank you.
So,
Ah,
we are in the breeding process
Yeah, yeah.
right now, but,
when we had the goat, we used to have milk goats. I have 2 Angora goats.
Yeah.
So I'm a 5. But the goats, the milk goats, they're the ones I had to pull the goats. Yeah. The sheep are, I have 2 now, so they're just like, they spin out, the night, we go out in the morning, they're all cleaned up and wearing the goat.
Yeah.
I never enjoyed that, but I remember having to pull goats.
yeah, we had a call last year from one of them.
You have Matt, Blackwater?